Hi, everybody. So, today is 1,010 days. 1,010 days since Richard vanished from the barracks there at Fort Bliss in El Paso, Texas. And every day is a step closer to solving this crime. We absolutely know that it's a crime now. We know that it's murder. We know that it's way more than that because Richard was a whistleblower, and being a whistleblower, they get rights. They get rights. They should get protection, and he wasn't getting that protection. Matter of fact, they and who do I mean they? I mean Tavita Nusa. I mean the CID office there. Ron Steeg. Ron Steeg, he's in that office there at CID. Don't tell me that a whistleblower gets doxxed and that office doesn't understand what's going on to report it, right? To report it and protect the whistleblower even more so. I'm having a very, you know, the information's coming out, and there's such a conflict of interest in that CID Fort Bliss office. And it seems that Quantico knows that. They're delayed in answering us back. They said they would answer us back Friday by the end of the week. Okay, let's make it Sunday. I mean, Saturday. But so the end of the week for military, though, is a Friday, and they should have at least contacted us and said, I'm still working this out, and I haven't forgotten about you. Um, but once again, they didn't deliver on a promise, and it's negligence, it's dereliction of duty, and we'll be working on that this week, because we need some answers for all of the leads that we have provided. We're doing our job as the chief investigators of our son's case, yet the uh, the agencies, our institutions, um, that are supposed to be guarding Richard and answering all these inquiries and fighting for justice, investigating for justice, um, using the U.S. Marshals to go and find these fugitives. Um, that, that's what they should be doing right now. That's what they should be doing because these crimes are huge, absolutely huge from our scenarios. So we're conducting some scenarios. We're putting together the 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 key players in all of this. Of course, when you talk about the CID there at Fort Bliss in El Paso, Texas, you talk about Tavita Nusa, you talk about Leilani Hart, you talk about Dallas Hart, James Hart, that family, and um, why do I say that family? And don't forget, and if you haven't been able to keep up with this, but a lot of family things in the Hart families have been going on since the 1990s. Okay, um, not too good of things, not too good of things. And what happened is Richard was making whistleblower complaints to the CID. We are being told that Tavita Nusa, this is through a leak, that Tavita Nusa was assigned to Richard's whistleblowing case. Okay, that he put in these reports in the CID as a whistleblower. He was supposed to be kept safe get those rights as a whistleblower as anybody would hope for. And that wasn't what happened. Um, Tavita Nusa has loyalties outside and much stronger than his oath, his duty to being a criminal investigative detective investigator for the CID, the Criminal Investigative Division there at Fort Bliss. And his conflict of interest was to Leilani Hart. Okay. We've been told that, they have a very intimate relationship. We've been told that they are family. James Hart said they are family. They're both Samoan, um, and they're family. So I, I have screenshots, and it seems that what James Hart was saying was right. Leilani Hart and James Hart are in this divorce proceedings. I don't know if it's finished. The last time I heard, they were still going through the divorce proceedings. Dallas Hart told me they were going through these divorce proceedings, and there was, James Hart was being, uh, very trying to offer um, Leilani Hart certain things so that they could complete the divorce, but she wasn't accepting it. That's what Dallas Hart was telling me. And Leilani Hart, we were told, is having a very intimate relationship with Tavita Nusa, which makes this a conflict of interest because we maintain with our witnesses that we have that Dallas Hart was the XO for Delta Battery 143. Okay? Um, that he was, yeah, he was, now, yes, I know, I know. And that has been kept from us. It's terrible. It's terrible. So now I also want to say that Dallas Hart says no, that he was not. But we haven't gotten any hard evidence to prove him uh, to back up what he's saying. And at this point, because we've been lied to over and over and over again, I think that Dallas Hart, James Hart, Leilani Hart, anybody in Delta Battery 143, anybody in 32nd ADCOM, like Lieutenant Colonel Brad Bugado, he could provide us with information backing up Dallas Hart as having nothing to do with Delta Battery, but being in 243. But this is not what has happened. It's been crickets, and but not from witnesses. Witnesses have told us that absolutely Dallas Hart was in Delta Battery 143. Okay, and so this is a huge conflict of interest if Richard is whistleblowing, and it absolutely had to do with the relationship with Dallas Hart and Leilani Hart and James Hart. Okay, absolutely, it had to do with that. Richard was guidon bearer. Okay, he's not the only guidon bearer, but he was guidon bearer, and what the privilege that you get as a guidon bearer is that you are in the orderly room. You are in the orderly room with Dallas Hart, with David Park, with Jay Paulin or Michael Ruggiero. You're in there with them. You understand what's going on. You hear things, you see things. And Richard then decided that he was not going to just look the other way to some things that were happening. And so he reported to the CID. And Tavita Nusa then doxed Richard, and the right terminology would be illegally exposed him as a whistleblower. And when he was illegally exposed as a whistleblower, then whatever was going on, they got the information. Leilani Hart got the information. And now we were told by, I think it was on the phone with James Hart, um, that that Leilani Hart was putting together an accusation or an allegation. I think allegation would be the correct terminology. An allegation against him, um, uh, sex with underage girls, um, and many, many more things. Uh, Long history there of up to no good. Okay, that she was alleging to about her husband, because this divorce, and I don't know what possesses anyone to do a false allegation. you know why isn't she arrested? I mean, she should be in big trouble for a false allegation, because um, James Hart said that the CID had cleared him. And but do I believe anyone? I don't believe anyone at this point, because we've been so lied to. So what we do know is that it is true. Thank you. We don't believe anyone at this point, and for very, very good reason, right? We've got to verify everything. Um so what we do know is that Leilani Hart did put in a scathing report of her husband. Um, it was bad, y'all, to the CID. And it was so bad. It was so serious. Let's just say that. It was so serious that it became an FBI file. And we received the CID and the FBI file numbers. And the allegations that are in there are just would make, it's just not good at all. And which includes Dallas Hart. I'll just tell you that much. It includes Dallas Hart. And so there was a lot of things going on that were not good. And we were told that Leilani Hart used those files that Tavita Nusa illegally exposed, um, to fortify her complaints. And so that really put a target on Richard's back. So this is uh, the 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 facts that we're putting together, and we're putting it into a scenario, because it's absolutely a hard fact that Leilani Hart put in this CID and the FBI complaint that was scathing. And we know that for sure because we talked to the notary public. She had it notarized. And that notary public absolutely confirmed that it was notarized on the 22nd of July, 2020. The 22nd of July, 2020. So we know these things as fact. We know a lot of other facts in this case, that make the crimes super serious. Okay, super serious. And I'm gonna even I have it here. I listed on the Telegram some of these crimes: conspiracy to commit murder, obstruction of justice, tampering with evidence, abuse of authority, failure to report a death, negligence, false official statement, misprision of a felony, and misconduct. And, what we're doing is just putting suspects who we believe, allegedly did these things under, you know how at the beginning we were told by the PI that we needed to look at different options. You know, if Richard walked away, we know he didn't do that. If he committed suicide, we know he didn't do that. If he got in an accident, we know he didn't do that. That he was abducted, we believe he was abducted. Okay, we believe he was abducted, either directly from the barracks or while he was on duty. He was called to be on duty somewhere and they abducted him. Um, so that's what we believe. Those are the two scenarios there. And we believe he was. And we've had too many people, too many witnesses, too much evidence saying that he was in uniform. So that means he was on duty. Okay, so he was on duty somehow, some way, and was abducted. And then the other option was murder, right? Was he murdered? And yes, he was murdered. Everything about this case points directly at murder. Okay, it doesn't point to anything else. It doesn't. Okay, it doesn't point to him being in Mexico alive. It points to him being, his remains being found in Mexico. That's what it points to. His remains. Everything about this is about him already being dead. Okay, and them keeping it a secret from us. And so I wrote, typed out a little bit of my feelings as parents, Rob and I, our feelings onto the Facebook. And I wrote, as the parents of Richard Halliday, we want to know the details surrounding our son's death, including the circumstances that led to it, the investigation into his death, and the current status of his remains. We want to know about any legal proceedings or investigations related to our son's death, as well as why this is being kept a secret. And so we really do believe so much is being kept a secret. Of course, his autopsies, well, the finding of him, right? And his autopsies, his death certificate, and the ongoing events that have happened since then. I think a lot is being kept a secret from the public and from us, and that is absolutely wrong. Absolutely wrong. So I think that falls under misconduct. So much of it, misconduct and negligence and reporting failure to report a death. And there's even more. And it gets a little complicated because there's so many at certain points of the timeline that have committed crimes that are listed in this. And I'll list it again. Conspiracy to commit murder, which is huge. You know, that carries, it could carry, especially in Texas, the death penalty. And in this case, I think the death penalty needs to be on the table for this because, number one, Richard is a U.S. Army soldier. He's a volunteer soldier. And he was misled by his recruiters. El Paso, the barracks, is not a one-off, y'all. We're having a systemic problem of criminal activity within our military. It is so systemic. That's all I hear. And El Paso, being right there on the border, is so important to our national security. It's such a breach of our national security because it's right there on the border. And there's so much criminal activity from the narcotics, from the weapon smuggling. We know that. From the human trafficking, from the child sex trafficking, also all the child pornography, um, and the racketeering. Um, and this is really important because you might not even think racketeering is that important, or um, the gambling crimes, or just all the other conspiratorial or economic crimes going on, but they're super super important because it shows a level of a culture of corruption, of criminality. And so we have this culture of criminality, and we're sticking children from migrants in the emergency intake center and putting criminals, absolute a criminal culture, I should say, that would be a criminal culture. And what happens with the criminal culture is, and I always point to, like Brigadier General David Stewart, or I would point to Command Sergeant Major Jake Jakovitz, who we've had contact with. We've looked right into their eyes, and what's happening is this criminal culture is making them participate, and I'm not making excuses for them. It's just that when you have this criminal culture, and your job is part of it, and you're part of it, let's just say that it doesn't make you a better person. You participate in it, and before you know it, you are a criminal. And in this case, I believe both of them are major criminals. Major criminals. And I would put their name on the list for conspiracy to commit murder, obstruction of justice, tampering with evidence, abuse of authority, failure to report a death, negligence, false official statement, misprision of a felony, misconduct. I would put them on this list, um, in these categories, because they are leaders, and they do have an obligation to care for their soldiers, 100%. And along with the 44 four-star generals and admirals. And this has been going on for a long time, y'all. A long time. It just didn't come out of thin air, this culture of criminality, this culture of cold-bloodedness, this culture that is treasonous against our country, that is so harmful for our national health, um, our spirit as a country. And so, you know, it's being groomed into the system so that people are bold. They feel like, why not? I can do it. I can do it. So many people are making money selling these weapons, or selling the drugs, taking advantage of these big paychecks that soldiers are getting. These young, very young soldiers, they get $25,000 enlistment bonus, or 50,000 re-enlistment bonus, or even more now, even more, because the recruitment rate is so low. So they get, and they know they get this money, and they devise a plan, and they team up together. And Richard's unit absolutely was up to no good. That because Richard wouldn't just put in a CID complaint for just something, something little. it had to be something big because, when you really get to know Richard, he wanted to be CID, right? He wanted to be CID. He loved Sherlock Holmes. He loved White Collar. He loved Columbo. He loved any kind of um, uh, criminal investigator. Um, he really loved that, and he fought for justice in this case. So he put into the CID and he put in a complaint to the CPS, the Child Protective Services, which gives you a good idea of what he was complaining about. And Tavita Nusa was supposed to guard him, guard his rights. That's his duty. And yet he had a conflict of interest. And so did, I believe, Jay Paulin had a conflict of interest. Now, he was retired at the time, but something else was going on. I don't know if he was an employee of the Hearts. I don't know. Um, we're getting some reports that he was an employee of the Hearts. And, I don't know how that can happen. He was a retired first sergeant, but he was absolutely involved in this. He inserted himself very early on, not very early on, but after we found out. So he inserted himself into this, to the disappearance of our son, and was trying to, I guess, sabotage the search for Richard very early on. The same thing with David Park. But yeah, we heard that he was an employee of the Hearts, and so he also had, if this is so, he had a really good friend that was in the CID right there at Fort Bliss at the time, Ron Stieg. And so there was a double conflict of interest. And so we know that Leilani Hart was getting information. We know very early on there were leaks going to Delta Battery members or people associated with Delta Battery 143. And we questioned the leadership early on. Why are there leaks? And so we have proof very early on, as far as in our search for Richard, our investigation for Richard, that there were leaks. And so we don't know how those leaks were getting out, but we know in one major complaint to the CID and FBI that Tavita Nusa was leaking to Leilani Hart. We know that. We don't know if Ron Stieg was leaking to Jay Paulin, but we do know that Tavita Nusa was leaking, and that was an illegal exposure of a whistleblower. So what would that fall under? The illegal exposure of a whistleblower. I'm going to have to look that one up and add it to the list, because that put a target on Richard's back. And who was aiming at that target to destroy Richard? Major General Clem Coward and Lieutenant Colonel Michael Roddick. So absolutely, how are they involved in all of this? But they targeted Richard severely. I mean, they wanted to smoke him. with nothing left. And this set Richard up to be murdered. Absolutely. I believe. And so the big suspects, um, does, and we're hearing that Leilani Hart also was employed. So she's employed, and then she employs, or the Hart family employs, Jay Paulin. So there is some real twisting stuff going on here. If this is accurate information, I'm putting it out there so that Leilani Hart can call, James Hart can call, Dallas Hart can call, Jay Paulin can call, Ron Steeg can call, Tavita Nusa can call. They can leave a message. But there's some twisting things going on here. And if this information is correct and there's this much conflict of interest, then that conflict of interest is reaching out to Major General Clem Coward and Lieutenant Colonel Michael Roddick, who also has a connection with Deborah Sarah West, okay, who has a connection with Michael Ruggiero, which was another first sergeant. You know, they all are connected, and you know, this is such a huge, it's a murder that went really brutal. That's what this is. And why would Leilani Hart want Richard murdered? Why would James Hart want Richard murdered? Why would Tavita Nusa want Richard murdered? Why would Dallas Hart want Richard murdered? Not just murdered, but brutally murdered. And why would Jay Paulin want Richard murdered? Would he? Why would Major General Clem Coward want Richard destroyed? Because he did. Why would Lieutenant Colonel Michael Roddick want Richard destroyed? Because he did. And David Park, too, wanted Richard destroyed. Because not one person told us that Richard was a whistleblower. Not one. We had to find that out. Well, I should tell you the person that well, I shouldn't. I don't want to. One person did say it, which alerted us. So I have to backpedal a little bit and say that yes, we do have, you know, Halliday, you know, the IG were all over the barracks because of Halliday, or Richard made CPS complaints. But why didn't the authorities? Why didn't Lieutenant General Sean Bernabe, when we met, why didn't General McConville, why didn't General Garrett, why didn't Command Sergeant Major Jakovitz, Brigadier General Stewart, why didn't they, when they sat down with us, say Richard was a whistleblower? Richard was a whistleblower, and we're looking into this. This gives motive. And so the motive clearly lays into Leilani Hart, Dallas Hart, James Hart, Tavita Nusa, but really in the Harts, because if Richard is reporting on activities from the Harts that Leilani Hart feels necessary to include in her CID FBI file, that was notarized on the 22nd of July, 2020. And if it was notarized, which gave it weight, which gave it legitimacy, which gave it, um, this is a factual stamp because she's, putting her whole life on the line there, unless there's corruption, which there is. So, we don't know. But was James Hart PO'd? Was he mad? So this whole thing, we would like answers, because it's not fair to the Hart family if all of this stuff is coming out and the military and the AUSAs and all the rest of the authorities are not saying anything, because it's very clear. If it's not just me, the whole El Paso county area wants to know if they have such brutal murderers living right there amongst them. Okay, because this would be the illegal exposure of a whistleblower, the destruction of a whistleblower, the murder of a whistleblower, the abduction. We believe he was abducted in uniform of a U.S. Army, active duty U.S. Army soldier, to abduct him, to cut him asunder, cut him apart, y'all, and then collude and conspire with one another on how to hide these remains, how to separate these remains, and it's just bad. And I think El Paso, and I think the military, Fort Bliss, wants to know if they have brutal Jack the Ripper type of murderers living amongst them. And so, if I was Leilani Hart, if I was James Hart, if I was Dallas Hart, I would definitely go to the CID, go to the FBI, go to whatever authorities and say, look, I'm being accused of Jack the Ripper kind of style murder. The plotting, and y'all, sexual abuse is part of this. Okay? Sexual abuse is part of this. So as parents of Richard Halliday, we want to know the details surrounding our son's death, including the circumstances that led to it, the investigation into his death, the current status of his remains. We want to know about any legal proceedings or investigations, arrests related to our son's death. We want to know about the autopsies, and if there was a death certificate signed. We want to know that. And we want to know, why is all of this being kept a secret? Because this is an active duty U.S. Army soldier in uniform who has been brutally murdered, cut asunder. That's what we believe. That's what all the proof is. We've been made the investigators into our son's murder by the CID, by Lieutenant General Sean Bernabe. They're the ones that told us, bring us leads. We can't really do anything. Our hands are tied. You have to bring us leads, and then maybe we can look into this. And which is not the truth, because We have brought them lots of leads and inquiries about those leads we've put forth, and they haven't done anything on it. Nothing that we know of. Have they done anything? I mean, at least they should get back with us in a letter and saying, we understand that there is a suspicion that Leilani Hart and Dallas Hart and James Hart and others have, acted like Jack the Ripper, and we want to notify you on this, blah, da, 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 and let us know what's fact, what's fiction. I mean, we're getting that it was Jaime Esparza that signed off on the warrants and the subpoenas. Richard was so scrutinized. He was so scrutinized. They had up to just about 80 subpoenas and warrants. And we're getting information that it was Jaime Esparza that signed off on those for the military. But do you think that there was any victims' advocacy, him contacting us when he knew those kinds of subpoenas and warrants were going through? Now I don't know. Why is it a secret? Who is signing off on the subpoenas and warrants for the investigation for our son? Oh, what attorney USAs are involved in this? Why do we have to hear it through leaks? Why can't they be upfront with us like we're upfront with them? I mean, they're cowards if they can't write it down. I mean, I have to come on a live stream, and who knows who's watching. I'm putting my life on the line here, and I have to name names because as the parents of Richard Halliday, we want to know. We want to know the details surrounding our son's death. Absolutely. And for the sake of every service member there, Fort Bliss, and also for the El Paso residents. I mean, why? Where is Veronica Escobar in this? Covering up something else? I mean, she feels like she's done her job on this one. Cover up. Okay, cover up Halliday case. Cover up I'll get in trouble to say it all. And which brings me to these autopsies. We've been really looking into the autopsies of Richard's remains because there is that, right? And the death certificate. And it looks like, I don't know, this is, should I say it? Should I say it? And I have to be really careful with the words. But we would like to know if Dr. Raskin or Ortiz did the autopsies, and then who signed off on the death certificate. Dr. Ricardo Ortiz? You got Dr. Raskin Ortiz and Dr. Ricardo Ortiz. I'm going to leave it at that because we need help. We need help to make this case transparent as it should be. It's very important that our cases are transparent, that justice can be seen. And I know justice is blind, but carrying out justice needs to be seen. People need to know that the agencies are doing their job. And that's why Cover Up Veronica is so important. And she knows it. She knows it. And yet she is, uh, you know, has sold herself out to this unbelievable evil. Where is she? She can absolutely have the subpoenas herself out to do this judicial duties that she's part of, her oversight that she's part of, protecting Hispanics, which she's part of. And yet she wants like a Jack the Ripper to be running around El Paso, Fort Bliss, or in any other community. Because if those autopsy reports are correct, Richard was brutally murdered. And I don't think people want that to go unanswered for. No accountability. And I was given a report that violent criminals are just being let out of the military. And I don't understand that, since you have Judge Javier Xavier, if you want to say it that way, Rodriguez from San Antonio, Sunland Springs case, saying that this soldier, not airman, it was airman, Air Force, mass murderer, was not entirely culpable. That the Air Force was 60%, I think it was a little over 60% culpable for this murder, because the Air Force did not report the violent crimes that the shooter had in his past, and also, allowed for him. He had mental illness too, and it allowed for him to purchase weapons. But if they would have put all that information on the FBI database, he would not have been able to purchase a weapon legally. So, because of that negligence, there was a clear message sent to the Air Force, sent to the military. And, the barracks SOPs, standard operating procedures for the barracks, were not being followed. There was no esprit de corps in that orderly room. Okay? When you, and this is something my dad kept pressing, and I'm going to say it over and over again for quite a while, because it took me, maybe you're much quicker than me, but it took me a while to really fully understand what my father was trying to teach me. And that is, if the leadership has no respect for their guidon, right? If they have no respect for their unit, the emblem for their unit, then they have no respect for the soldiers in their unit. They have no respect for the military that they serve in. They have no respect for the country they're serving. And it's a very that and no SOPs being followed. If you don't care about the guidon having a little place to display your unit flag, you don't care about that. You can't even follow that rule, and this is your unit flag. And Richard complained about that all the time to my dad. So that means no esprit de corps, and the dominoes fall. And the dominoes fall into criminality, into negligence, dereliction of duty, into conspiracy to commit murder and obstruction of justice and tampering with evidence and weapon smuggling and narcotics trafficking and human trafficking and the making of child sex pornography and um, marketing it and blasting it using these. They distribute it with these servers that they have. They have these servers, and you can just airdrop it right there onto whatever device you have. And it's it's a real problem. And if you're not going to have a unit that cares about their guidon, and you're going to have a unit that doesn't have esprit de corps, then green, you're holding up a big green flag for them to be derelict and negligent in everything else that they do. With no pride, no honor, no integrity, no respect, no selfless service, no personal courage, no honor. I don't know if, yeah. That's what my dad was teaching me over and over again. He said that guidon is very important. And so, what connection does Lalani Hart have with Delta Battery 143? Well, we believe it's her son. And so what connection does James Hart have with Delta Battery 143? It's his son. And it's also his wife, because she was out to destroy him. They were in a tit for tat. And if Richard is making things easier, is reporting things that are very serious, that can destroy Dallas Hart's career in life, that could destroy James Hart's career in life, which, domino effects and destroys Lalani Hart's career in life. And that is then motive. Now, why was he so brutally murdered? I don't know. I don't know. I don't know the answer to that. I don't. I will take questions now. Yeah. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining. Okay, 11 comments. Thank you. Thank you, Danielle. Thank you, Jerry. No justice, no peace. Exactly. Right? We need peace. Um, yes, Danielle. She had her CID report that she had used Richard's. This is this is what we've been told. Um, the reason why she wanted those leaked files is to use what was reported in those leaked files by whistleblowers, including Richard. She used Richard's whistleblowing information in a CID report that she had notarized and turned in, notarized on the 22nd of July, 2020. Once it was notarized and turned in, um, who leaked that out? Did it leak out to James Hart? I mean, they have connections everywhere. So I'm thinking that James Hart. Now you have to remember there are two conflicts of interest in the CID office there at Fort Bliss. One is Tavita Nusa with Leilani Hart. The other one is Ron Stieg with Jay Pollan. And we have this, and we know that for sure. Both of those. Those are facts. That conflict of interest is facts. Ron Stieg is good friends with Jay Pollan. He's in that office. We know that as a fact. We know that Tavita Nusa, very close relationship with Leilani Hart. Now, as a senior NCO, are you going to keep up with each other or whatever? Is Jay Pollan a friend of James Hart? I don't know. How did that information did it get to James Hart? This is where I have a lot of questions. We have a lot of questions because we know that somebody has ties with people in high places like Major General Clem Coward and Lieutenant Colonel Michael Roddick, and they have these ties, y'all, and retaliation began. I'm not saying that retaliation began on the 22nd of July, 2020. I'm saying retaliation began before that because Richard had put in the complaints. And how were they getting? We know that they were getting leaked to Leilani Hart, but could it be that they were getting leaked in another way? Because we have Hema Sochil, the wife of First Sergeant Michael Ruggiero, um, getting leaks. Getting leaks. So you have to run the scenarios to see, one, how to X out what is absolutely not possible. And right now, what's possible is the abduction and the vicious murder of our son because he was retaliated against and he was illegally exposed as a whistleblower. That's the big scenario right now. And it all points to Leilani Hart, Dallas Hart, and James Hart. Okay, that's who it points to. And Tavita Nusa. And then there's players in it. Absolutely, we would like to know what part did Major General Clem Coward play, because this is, it's clear that he was out to smoke Richard, retaliate against him. That's their word for retaliation, I guess. And smoke him hard, continuously and severely. And so did Lieutenant Colonel Michael Roddick. And I think it's big business, y'all. And it puts us in such danger. So here we are grieving, and put into danger. It's how cold blooded can they get, you know? It's maybe you need to contact the Judicial Licensing Board regarding Veronica's bad faith and not upholding her oath in Richard's case and failing the public by telling them on the news she would have a third party investigate Richard Halliday's disappearance, which she chose not to do in bad faith, in my opinion. And we were there. We spoke with her, and she also failed to tell us that Richard was a whistleblower. And do not tell me she did not know that Richard was a whistleblower. They all knew that she was a whistleblower. Okay, they all knew it. They all knew it, and she didn't tell us. That's withholding evidence. That would be what is that? Obstruction of justice, negligence. And 20,000 migrant children unaccounted for on Fort Bliss Army Base Emergency Intake Center under Veronica's watch. Where are these children at? And have any of them been accounted for? Right. And I think that's a very good point that you're making. So we have Jack the Rippers out there. Okay. We have Jack the Rippers. Anyone that, if, look, those autopsies, it's bad. And you have unaccounted for minors out there, and she doesn't care about this case. Cover Up Veronica doesn't care about this case, and she's on the, you know, judicial and the Hispanic and all this other stuff. I need to bring that up and name it again. Um, she doesn't care about those children. She doesn't care about Hispanics. She doesn't care about the border. She has a conflict of interest because she has oversight over the Department of Justice over Fort Bliss, and her husband is an immigration judge. So she has a total conflict of interest. And then with Richard's remains partially being found, fragmented parts being found in Juarez, Mexico, she has a real conflict of interest. So we're and I don't believe that's the end of conflict of interest in this case. Because how in the world would they get away with hiding Richard's remains, hiding his autopsies, hiding this brutal murder for so long if they didn't even have more conflict of interest? Yeah. Was Paulin the one who went in to visit Richard when Richard was hospitalized? That's what he said in his writing on a social platform for NCO's social media site. Okay. So he's telling his NCO buddies that information, and that was then snapped and sent to us. Um, he never mentioned that Richard was a whistleblower. Captain Park never mentioned. It was like, why is that a secret? He was already illegally exposed. Is it because, Jay Paulin easily, if he had a connection, and what that tells you is that he still had a connection with Delta Battery. I mean, here he is retired and he's inserting himself. He's inserting himself so much so that at the end he says, "You've heard about Vanessa Guillen. Well, this ain't that. Let me assure you, this ain't that. This isn't that, right?" So, the hearts being connected to Delta Battery, and then Jay Pollan being their employee. Um, I I just think that's curious, because we have these piles of papers here that were leaked to us, and we're just trying to go through them little by little. And that is one thing that really stuck out is that uh, and these are leaks, so we need our agencies to tell us what's fact and what's fiction. But I thought it was interesting that it's saying that Jay Pollan was working for the Hearts. Isn't that interesting? I think that's interesting. Um, and he goes on this NCO site, and I think that information, um, I think it's so criminal. I think everything he did was criminal. He's glad I'm not his judge. So, okay, everyone. Let's see if I have any other comments here. Thank you so much, Danielle. Thank you, Patty. Thank you, Jerry. Thank you, Anicia. Collusion, in my opinion. Yep, absolutely. Thank you. Thank you, Ruth. So sad I still have hope he's alive and they are just harassing him. Um, Thank you, Ruth. Thank you. What's the update, Sean Hammer? Well, Sean, the update is that there's some Jack the Ripper out there and no one cares. No one cares. We have 20,000 unaccompanied, um, un, uh, unaware, unfollowed, what is that? Minors out there. Unaccounted for, thank you. Unaccounted for minors out there. And there's more, thousands more. We have our volunteer sons and daughters that we've entrusted to the U.S. military, and they're stationed there. We have our populace there in El Paso County and New Mexico, the bordering New Mexico. And we have a vicious, brutal murderer on the loose, and no one cares. No one cares who murdered Richard, an active duty soldier in uniform. The media doesn't care. The media there, and we have the media campaign, and I almost forgot to mention it tonight, but do not forget to write to the IRS. You can write EO class, I believe so, EO class at irs.gov. And, all of these little local media, newspapers, channels, stations that have nonprofit tax free status, that they are tax exempt because, we want them to cover all stories and have not covered this story lately with these autopsy reports, with the death certificate. And, I don't think it's just happened chance that the chief medical examiner, his last name is Ortiz. I don't think that's, wow, that just, uh, so what's going on there? And you have a soldier being brutally, absolutely cut asunder, cut to pieces, um, spread out all over West Texas and into Mexico, making this international. And he has a yellow Interpol. So that means he's not a criminal. Richard's not a criminal. He's a yellow Interpol. Um, and you don't have media covering this. I think we need to do some complaining. I think we need to withdraw their rights to be tax exempt. because someone's pulling their chain, and that goes against, okay, you can have someone pulling your chain, but you can't be tax exempt. All right? That's what's going on right now. And then, of course, we're putting together M.O.M.S, which is Mothers of Missing, Murdered, Mistreated Soldiers. And maybe it should be Moms Cubed, right? Moms Cubed with a cubed at the end because, or, um, missing, murdered, mistreated, mishandled. Uh, yeah. So we'll be working on that this week, and it's already up. Um, so you can go ahead and join that group. Pass it around. It is just a skeleton right now, and but you know when mothers have a love for their sons and daughters, right? When we have a love for our soldiers, we put meat on the bones, right? We get with it. We get with it, and we will get together, unify, and make this happen, and reach out to the authorities and say, what's going on? Why aren't you covering this story? Why aren't you covering the murders? Why aren't you apprehending the murderers? And in this case, a Jack the Ripper. And you know, if I was Lilani Hart and James Hart and Dallas Hart, I would absolutely want my name cleared from this. I would not want people to suspect me of being Jack the Ripper. And my goodness. And more. And more. And Tavita Nusa too. And then you have those that have covered up, those that have provided alibis, those that have participated in the intimidation, those have participated in the vile and vulgar phone calls that were asymmetric warfare tactics, military operations, FBI informants, participated in helping to hide the remains, transport the remains to the different areas. Now, that is a wowzer update. That's a wowzer update. So, and I want to say too that my YouTube channel wouldn't let me live stream. Which is odd, isn't it? Yeah. Okay, everyone, thank you so much. I have the prayer vigil here, and I thought that I would say a prayer. Um, Almighty God, who created us in your own image, grant us grace to contend fearlessly against evil and to make no peace with oppression, and that we may reverently use our freedom. Help us to employ it in the maintenance of justice among people and nations, to the glory of your holy name, through Jesus Christ our Lord, who lives and reigns with you and the Holy Spirit, one God, now and forever. Amen. So I'm going to be reading some of the vigil every time, and I just want to wish everyone a good night, and I will be back tomorrow, God willing, with more new news. And no liaison can tell us, or no CID agent can tell us there's no new news, because us coming on here every day, and I say us, Team Find Richard Halliday, us coming on here, giving all kinds of new news, and they need to be driven to do their duty, and that's a sad reality, but that's it. And so that's why we need to keep doing this, and that's why Rob says, make sure you tell them we love them, we love you, we love you, and we thank you for spending this time to fight for justice for Richard, for us, and for our service members, for our country. And please share. And thank you so much. God bless you. Bye bye.